Well, welcome in. I cannot believe this, December 3rd, damn it, 2019. Where is the year gone? Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com. It is another edition of the Happy Hour Tip-Off Show, powered by WagerTalk.com. I'm Joe Raineri, he's Ralph Michaels, and college basketball is certainly on our mind tonight more than anything else. But I mean, damn it, Ralph, I'm looking at the calendar. I'm like, what do we got, 28 days left in 2019? I mean, listen, before we know it, March, we're going to be picking brackets, Ralph. What the hell's going on here, man?
Yeah, I have to get through that bowl season first, though, Joe. So, let's go ahead and do that. And it's the great time. I mean, when you have bowls every day, and when the tournaments are playing in the day, I love it. Around the holidays, but the schedules are changing. We have Big Ten games around the corner where we have conference games, and the ACC already has played some conference games, and I think the Mountain West is starting next week too. So quite a unique December when we're talking December 3rd, and teams have already and will be playing conference games this week.
Yeah, it's crazy, and of course the big news here. It started last night, but even moving forward here, we've got the ACC versus the Big Ten. We got some crazy matchups here tonight. We've got a new AP poll. People are trying to figure out how is it Texas Tech moved up in an AP poll and they didn't win a damn game last week, Ralph. But it's I would caution people, and maybe this is a good time to remind folks that are just getting into basketball. How much time do you spend looking at those polls there, Ralph? How much does it truly mean to you?
This is probably the first poll I've looked at in several years, because I was just interested to know how much Michigan, from not being ranked, where they would end up. So there was some intrigue. But you got to remember, guys, the AP poll is this. It's a bunch of sports writers that are writing football, basketball, girls volleyball, and they're voting for a poll, and they look to see who won and who lost and what records are, and they're voting. I mean, the AP poll means nothing. It's a popularity contest, and by no means should you ever base a play on it. With the exception of this. In football, teams that aren't normally ranked that all of a sudden become ranked, those are teams I do look to fade at, because they get a big head. They think, oh, now we're ranked. They think they're better than they should be. So besides looking at it for that advantage, the only time I ever, again, paid attention to the poll was I did look today to see where Michigan ended up after being not ranked and what they did down in the battle for Atlantis.
Yeah, big game for them here tonight. Of course, we got a couple of marquee matchups we will get to. One will include those Wolverines. 3 games, 3 days, fly home for Thanksgiving. Back in the air, now taking on Louisville here tonight, who happens to be, Ralph, the 4th #1 team that we have seen thus far. The other 3 didn't do so well, so I think Louisville is hoping that maybe, just maybe, they fare a little bit better than the 3 prior. But Chris Mack, I'm sure, and you'd agree with me, yeah, he's one of the better ones in the country. He's going to have his kids ready there.
Yeah, you have one of the best players in the country in Nora, and it's certainly a team that was prepared to have success.
Yep.
Coming off what they did last year. You look though, they lost in the first round of the tournament against Minnesota. So you take a 23-win team and you say, well, where are they going to rank preseason even with starters back? And people didn't think they were going to be #1, but it's good. I mean, these #1 teams, there's not a coach who worries about losing as a #1 early in the year if your team becomes better. So we'll move on.
Yeah. And don't forget, Izzo, Coach K, round 432 tonight as well. So we'll get to those games. But let's take a look back, of course, 24 hours ago, like we like to get you guys caught up here. Some of the upsets from last night, and there were a few, Ralph. It was a limited card. We covered pretty much all the games there yesterday, and we were certainly spot on a few of them here. But there were some interesting games there that we saw last night. Maybe we didn't take into consideration. We thought Illinois would be a little bit better and more competitive than they were against Miami.
Yeah, I think that was a horrible loss for Illinois, especially because they were down big early. You look at their wins, you don't know what you have with Illinois because their best win's Hawaii, and that was only a 13-point win at home. Then you have road losses against Arizona and Miami of Florida. So, Miami of Florida pulling the upset, Holy Cross. North Texas against Arlington. There was a game we talked about on Best Bets that I thought Arlington would play well. And, there's a reason when you're handicapping the card, this is a good lesson for our viewers if you're new to betting. When you're totally focused on handicapping the card and you don't like a play because you have the positives and the negatives, don't let yourself talk yourself into a play later just because you remember some of the good points. When you're handicapping in the morning, or like I'm just using my example, I said I left the game off and I looked at some of the reasons I left it off. But later you and I were talking about it. We looked at the situations and I said, the game's getting stronger for me. Well, when you go back and you look at why you didn't use it, remember those reasons as well.
Yeah.
And then South Florida against Furman and Illinois, Chicago against San Diego as the upsets. You'll see that I listed on the top, there was 5 upsets by dogs or 2.5 or more. All 5 are listed. Oftentimes that won't be the case. We'll just list the biggest upsets, but we'll always tell you how many there were on the card for the total day.
We had we were on air yesterday recording, Ralph, and it had just come in, but damn Holy Cross upsetting everybody. Look at Holy Cross throwing a wrench in everybody's thinking. And I don't think this is the first time. A lot of people have been whispering about Holy Cross. They took down Mercer yesterday. I don't know. Are we missing something with Holy Cross?
No, they're not a good team. I mean, you're still 1-7.
Right.
They just happen to shoot the lights out against Mercer. They're, you look at their defensive efficiency and they're not good. And, what happens in a game like that? Well, you're playing at 11 a.m. You're playing in a neutral setting in Boca Raton in the Florida Atlantic Classic. And, you shoot 64%, and that's why you win the game. I mean, they were 64% from 2-point land.
Yep.
So, take it for what it is. I'm really not moving up Holy Cross in my power ratings because of that. To me, it was a one-game outlier that, I actually think you find some value against, and then on the opposite side, they shoot 35% from 3-point land while Mercer shot 26%. So, you're playing a crappy team in a neutral setting at 11 a.m. in the morning, and you shoot the lights out. You're going to pull the upset.
Yep, amen to that. And some of those top performances yesterday, Ralph, that we had going on across the board. Always like to give you guys some names here, some names on some programs that you will probably hear all throughout the year. Lorenzo McGee there, Nicholls State taking on Campbellsville there, 34 points, 2 assists, 3 steals. Great effort there. And, of course, you see Chris Likes there in Miami. What a game he had against Illinois there. 28 points, 2 assists, and 4 steals, Ralph. And, Larinaga, it's not his first rodeo here. He's making do with what he's got there. And, every now and then they might surprise a team here or there.
Well, I mean, you look at their schedule. They played a very difficult schedule already. Losses to Louisville, Florida, and Connecticut. And you've beaten Florida Atlantic, UCF, Missouri State, and Illinois. So he's certainly going to have learned a lot. And, when you look at the top performances, you have to put asterisks next to a few of them, taking a look at the opponents. McGee played Campbellsville, and Johnson played Arlington Baptist. And then Noah Carter for Northern Iowa played Luther. So take those with a grain of salt. We still list them because the performances are something that you want to remember and who those leading scorers were. But, you have a team like Jabri Blount for NC Central. When you're in a loss like he was against Wofford, you played 38 minutes and he had 23-12 and 4 assists. That's something I look at is how those best players did in a losing situation and not just in a winning situation when everything was going right.
Yep, and some of the larger ATS total covers here, Ralph, on the day, starting, of course, at the top. those spreads as greens that we like to call cash. And, it started early yesterday, you said, here in my neck of the woods. South Florida, Boca Raton, FAU, Holy Cross taking down Mercer, 22.5 points there, Ralph. And the other game, of course, that we, let's face it, North Texas there, the Green Machine taking on Texas Arlington was another upset, 16.5 points. Just didn't see it coming, Ralph.
No, Elon was a home favorite against Kennesaw, and they did what they had to do. I mean, this Elon team had lost 6 straight. They beat 2 non-division foes, but they're another team that, you look at what Elon's done, 3-6. Their wins are against Kennesaw State, one of the worst teams, and 2 non-ranked teams. So, but again, the 6 losses they had were all against division foes. So there's some teams, even though it's December, we don't know what we have because the way the schedule's played out. And then we look at the biggest overs and the biggest undercovers. Illinois, Chicago getting 89 certainly is eye-opening.
Yeah.
Anytime you have an Ivy League team in the 150 total points scored as well for Columbia and Delaware, and then North Texas, Arlington. North Texas again was a game yesterday that they just shot well, and you're going to have those outlier games where is North Texas a great team? No, but if North Texas is going to shoot 37% and 58% from 2 and 3 point, and Arlington's going to shoot, under 50 and under 35, you're going to win those games.
Yeah, no, you absolutely are. And then, of course, the other shoe there, the unders, and this was a game early yesterday too. Hofstra Canisius, 35.5. They were expecting those two teams to go into the mid 150s. Ralph, didn't they shorted up a little bit there. 35.5 points. They were a little bit low there.
That is. And when people think about, low totals, check out the overs and check out the unders. The top 3 overs were all 138 or less, 133.5, 138, 122. And then 2 of the 3 unders were 130s as well. Bryant Navy, 136.5. And Elon again. We talked about Elon, one of the biggest covers. Elon also one of the biggest unders. It's not often that you have a team winning by 24 and the game still goes under by 17 points. Normally when a team blows out an opponent, but you hold Kennesaw State to 46 points, that's going to happen.
Yep, very impressive there. And again, a full slate here on the card today. We'll get to some of our marquee matchups, some of our best bets. But we do like to focus before we dive into the market and see what some of the bigger mover and shakers are, some of those games there that are attracting some of the bets here, Ralph. We like to talk a little TNA, little trends and angles here maybe on a game today that or two that stuck out to you. Was there a trend going into today that kind of you circled on the card?
Well, I have 4-team trend, two sides and 2 totals. And again, I'm just pulling out team trends that have high percentages. I'm not saying these are the teams I would bet, but again, you learn from if a team has been covering and they continue to cover, or if they don't. Drake's just been a covering monster the last couple years. Now 28-8-1 against the spread. That's 78%. You blindly play Drake in every game. You've covered almost 80%. Old Dominion on the opposite side of that, they're 6-23-1 against the spread. That's only 21% with 4 straight ATS losses. And then on the totals, San Francisco now 10 straight overs, including 5 this year. Do have a new head coach in Tom Golden. And Oakland, 521 over under. So 5 overs and 21 unders their last 26 games. Oakland's gone under 8 straight games. A team with a struggling offense, a decent defense, and a very slow pace. The perfect combination for unders.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, Ralph, here. A lot of these the games on the board tonight seeing some significant action. And we'll start with some of these. I'll go by sheer number of bets. And, of course, the marquee matchup is heads and tails above everything else. Anytime you're talking Michigan, Louisville, you're already going to get a whole bunch of bets there. But there's an interesting game here, Ralph, that seems to be getting a lot of people's attention. North Dakota State, Indiana State, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, this game here tonight, Ralph. And it opened up Indiana State laying 6, 138 was the total. It's I'm seeing 3.5 across the board here. So and it's also receiving a whole lot of action. North Dakota State getting a little more than half the tickets and 3/4 of the money right now, which might explain the move towards them. But North Dakota State, Indiana State, kind of off the beaten path, but yet a lot of interest here in the market.
Well, the game's on TV and it's the first game on the board. So I think that has something to do with it. Being a 5:30 start, you're only, you're getting some action in for those people that want it. It's a line move I disagree with. I actually, I had Indiana State in the mix as a play and maybe very well be using them as a best bet a little bit later.
Another game, 7 p.m. here tonight, receiving an awful lot of love. And on both sides, how about Butler, Mississippi? 7 p.m. Eastern time here tonight. Butler seems to be getting a little bit more love here, but the line's not moving an awful lot. So while they get a higher percentage of both the tickets and the money, Mississippi seems to be getting a little bit of love here. Opened up at 1.5. It's kind of 1.5-1 across the board. Total hasn't moved either in this game, Ralph.
I mean, what a game. Mississippi, a team greatly improved, and while they lost 2 of their last 3, you certainly could say those losses are to Memphis and Oklahoma State. And Butler is Butler. You know what? One of the premier mid-major teams. All they've done this year is knock off Minnesota, Missouri, and Stanford. While they're not top 20 teams, they're certainly decent middle-of-the-road teams that are going to play well. Butler's one of these teams, though, that is 7-0, Joe, and is now making their first true road game. So that's a situation I look usually to fade when a team has played at home or neutral settings. Now going into a tough environment like this, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and one final one here, Ralph, also getting a lot of love. 9 o'clock Eastern time. How about Florida State? Leonard Hamilton, Florida State, Indiana getting an awful lot of love. This line has actually moved away from Indiana here. They opened up as a 2.5-point favorite. They are now only a 1-point favorite. A lot of Florida State love coming in here, Ralph. 139 it opened up with as a total. It's down to 136.5. Florida State didn't start off the year all that well, but it is Florida State. They're going to have some athletes that are very well coached there.
Yeah, I mean, the Pittsburgh game they lost in the opener, that was the ACC opener, and you go on the road at Pittsburgh. It was a game they had won and was a disappointing loss. And what did they do their next game, though? They go around and they smack the Gators, who I thought the Gators were the better team. So, hey, Florida State is doing it on the defensive side. They beat Tennessee and Purdue this past weekend in Niceville. Close to them over by Pensacola, so they had proximity edge. But boy, I turned on that Tennessee game and I thought Florida State the crowd was going to be all Florida State. It was like half empty. It was like watching the games in Hawaii. So I was surprised they didn't get the backing they did, but it's tough. I'll tell you what, you battle Tennessee in a game that was wire to wire. You battle Purdue, go to overtime Friday and Saturday. You go home Sunday, and then you're flying out Monday to battle Indiana. And this is, again, they've already played at Pittsburgh and at Florida, so they're ready. But, boy, that's tougher than a tournament setting is Tennessee and Purdue and then Indiana, 3 games in 5 days.
It's a rough schedule. Some of these teams across the board on the card here tonight, guys, over 50 on the buffet of college basketball tonight. There's a lot to choose from and a lot to break down, Ralph. And, of course, we do like to throw our love towards a little dog here and there. We always like our dogs. We talk about them each and every day, and we talked a little bit about a couple of them yesterday. We do it every show. Is there a plus next to a team here, next to a number that you like maybe a little bit more than everybody else you think has a shot?
Well, looking through my board, and I am continuing to look through my board.
Well, I'll give you. I got one. There was a couple that stuck out to me here, so let's get your thoughts on one of them, Ralph, because I did think that maybe the numbers were a little crazy here, but. I'm looking at. Let me make sure I get the right number here and make sure that it hasn't moved since last time I looked it up. But I'm talking about BC Northwestern here, Ralph, and if I can find it, Make sure it was
761, 762.
760.
BC 3.5. Yeah.
Okay, so it is 3.5 still. So interesting game here, Ralph. The Northwestern, the Wildcats there, I believe. Listen, I think Northwestern's a little bit underrated this year. I think they do have the size advantage on BC. I think the defense is a little bit better as well. They're 3-3 on the year. They're 2-4 against the number. BC is also a 500 team, 4-4 on the season, 3-5 against the number. They've kind of lost 5 straight to the number, though, BC, and I got to be honest with you, I like Northwestern in this game. Yes, they've struggled on the offensive end, but this is because they lost a lot of players from last season, and they're kind of gelling right now. They're kind of putting it together. They've only got 45% of the minutes played, and 36% of the scoring have returned from last year. So they got some new guys they've been working in, but I just think it's a bad matchup for BC. I think it's a bad number. I think Northwestern's got a real shot at actually winning this game outright.
Joe, I'm going to take a short home dog, and it's Wright State. You know, Wright State is they're off a Miami win, and for those that don't know, I mean, those schools are about an hour and a half apart, and the kids know each other, and it was a nice, confident building win. That was coming off a loss to LaSalle, so they played last Wednesday. So, you know, it was a nice 6-day rest between games. And Western Kentucky played Louisville on Friday. So you're playing the number 1 team, or what was soon to be the number 1 team. And I look at Western Kentucky, and they have a game this Saturday against Arkansas at home. So you are Western Kentucky, and you have an SEC team coming to Bowling Green for a huge home game. So this game is sandwiched between Louisville and Arkansas. And I just think Wright State pulls the upset.
Yeah, and there's one other game here, too, Rob. It's a little confusing to me because they can't shoot, and that's Syracuse and Iowa. Now, Iowa doesn't play any defense, but Iowa can shoot. Syracuse plays some defense. They can't shoot, Ralph. They've been absolutely horrific over the last couple of games here. I think under 35% from the field in back-to-back games right now. I don't see them turning that around here tonight. It is in the Carrier Dome. But I think Iowa's just got a lot of firepower there. They're getting 4.5 points. I don't get the line. I know they got problems playing defense, Iowa, but I know they can shoot the ball.
Well, you know, again, it's always unique playing in the Dome and, you know, a different setting. You know, Syracuse, I think a lot of their offensive issues can be Oklahoma State's a damn good defensive team this year. We talked about them. I think that was our marquee matchup that day, and we talked about Oklahoma State with the uniqueness of having that big center in there and the way he changes shots. You know, and the Penn State game was a game that they shot poorly on. Iowa, again, the only concern I have is you open the season playing 5 straight home games, and you lost one of those to DePaul. And then you play 2 neutral games. You beat Texas Tech and you lose to San Diego State. So, you know, while you played 2 games away from home, you only scored 72 and 73, which for Iowa is down because they're a fast-paced team. But again, being the first true road game, you may lean with them. I have a little hesitation.
All right, there you go. Boeheim, it's interesting, too. Boeheim loves these kinds of spots, though, and their team usually shows up with that 2-3 zone defense here, but 4.5 is a lot of points. What about the card here, Ralph, tonight as far as situational spots or anything along those lines? I mean, we talked some trends and angles here. Is there any sort of situational outside of those on the board here tonight you looked at?
You know, there is a situation, and it's normally you think about situations and you think of side plays, but I'm actually going to a totals play with a situation. You know, I had talked about San Francisco, 10 straight overs and 5-0 or 6-0 over this season. And Arizona State is a team that likes to press, but think about Arizona State's schedule. Boy, they started off in China, then they come home. Then they go and they play 2 neutral games in Connecticut, and then they go and play Princeton in New Jersey. So this team has been well-traveled, but that was a week ago. They're now home. The offense has struggled. They were missing a couple guys, and they just played Virginia and Princeton, two of the slowest paced teams there are. So you're a running team. You're missing one of your best shooters. You play Virginia and Princeton. You have to slow the pace down because you can't press the pace. And now you have a week off, you're rested, and you get to play San Francisco, a team that's going to completely play up-tempo. Total 155, I believe, and I think it's a good situation to the over.
All right, and of course, on this slate of over 50 games here tonight in college hoops, there are a couple of marquee matchups. These two really are marquee, in fact, and it's Michigan-Louisville. Ralph, will start there first. We've got, Big Ten, ACC, Louisville at home. Michigan coming off of a Bahamas Atlantis tournament win, the trophy, 3 games, 3 days. They go home, and then they hop on a plane, and now they're on their way to Louisville here. It's tough sledding. What do you think? Is it too much for this team? Are they maybe a little bit overachieving at this point, or is this just a terrible spot for them?
I've got a question for you, Joe, before we talk into this game. And I put this out on Twitter, and I said, which is the real marquee matchup game? Number 1 Louisville against number 4 Michigan, or number 10 Duke against number 11 Michigan State?
Yeah. The problem is we've seen Izzo, Coach K. I think a lot of people will dismiss the Duke-Michigan State game simply because Coach K owns them. I think he's won 8 out of the last 10 that they head-to-head meetings there.
But Michigan State won the last game. I mean, they knocked them out.
Yes, absolutely. Not revenge factor there too as well. But it's so funny, that whole tired factor. It's like Oklahoma in football. Like, we're tired of seeing Oklahoma. We're tired of seeing Clemson. I think people are tired there. Louisville, just, these are the two teams that have gotten, I think, at least recency bias, maybe more press than anybody else.
Yeah, I tweeted that out in a survey. A couple hundred people have answered, and 63% picked Louisville, Michigan, and 37% picked Duke, Michigan State. I thought it'd be much closer to 50-50. So you were right in your assessment so far. We'll see what the late money does, but Louisville we knew was going to be a good team. Louisville has the best player on the court. And with Michigan, we didn't know what to expect with their losses and with Juwan Howard coming in. But I'll tell you what, while he's played a little faster pace than Boeheim did, he still has them playing incredible defense. And, facing Iowa State, North Carolina, and the Zags, 3 incredible wins. But I'm going to come back and say it again. I sound like a broken record. It has to be something extraordinary for me to play a team on a first true road game, especially when you're going into a hostile environment like Louisville, which just became the number 1 AP team and, hasn't been home since November the 24th. So I think it's going to be low scoring. I certainly lean with that. And I think if Michigan gets behind in a situation they're not accustomed to, we may see them struggle a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's also important to point out that it's while it's nice to see Howard come in here and kind of throw his own flavor into what they got going on, they still run a lot of what Beeline has installed there. I mean, they are a very heavy ball screen reliant team. That's what they do. But it seems like they're running it at a much faster pace here, Ralph, this year than what Beeline was. A very slow tempo, very, bring it up. Howard's got him playing a little bit quicker, a few more extra shots here in the game. I think maybe it looks like they're averaging more points than what we might have been used to at this particular point in the game. So the total is an interesting number in this matchup. I think both of these two teams, they're very close to one another, so it'll be interesting to see how much offense do we get in this game, and do they slow it down at all, Michigan?
Well, you talked about Bayline last year. They had an adjusted tempo of 317. They're 140. So, you are correct that they certainly have sped it up, but you're also talking about they just played 3 teams. The Zags, one of the fastest 40 teams in the country. Carolina's probably in the top 80, and Iowa State's probably in the top 20. So Michigan, we've seen them score more, but I think that's clearly because of the teams they just played. All 3 had pace. Well, now they're playing one that doesn't have pace, which, again, has me leaning to the under.
Yep. All right. That's game one. Game number two. You mentioned it. Duke taking on Michigan State. Very interesting in this one here, Ralph. It is a revenge factor in this spot. You had mentioned that Duke lost to Izzo. I mean, listen, Duke has owned this matchup the last 10 days. 8 out of the last 10 have gone in favor of Coach K and Duke. It's an interesting game. Duke not doing all that well against the number here recently, Ralph. 1-4 against the number in their last 5 games. Not like Michigan State has fared much better. They've covered just once in their last 5, so something's got to give here. Is it the right number? Do you like the spread in this at 6.5?
I think it's a little high. And, you look at, I tweeted this out again earlier, the Michigan State Duke with the scores and the covers. Michigan State beat them 68-67 on that last second shot in the last year. But Duke had been 8-0 straight up and 5-3 against the spread prior to that time. And it's amazing that you have two blue bloods like this that are playing for the 10th time in 10 years. I mean, you would think they're division conference opponents with that type of scenario. But I look at Michigan State, and I think when Langford comes back, they're the best team in the country. With a backfield of Winston and Langston, Langford, excuse me, I think they will be the best team. But Duke, in 12 seasons, Duke has been a dog of 4 or more 12 times. So they've been a dog of 4 or more once a year. That's it. Well, in the last 9 years, they've gone 6-1-2 against the spread as a dog of 4 or more. The one loss was last year against North Carolina when what's his name was out. I went brain dead with the who's playing for the Pelicans.
Oh,
for Duke.
Cam Reddish. Not Cam Reddish.
No, not Reddish.
Jones, not Jones.
No, one more. Okay, we both can't think of.
I'll see. That's going to annoy me now. So hold
Zion
on.
Williamson. Thank you very much. Jesus. Yeah, and we study college basketball for a living, and we're doing
New
a
Orleans,
show.
and I'm thinking Chicago. I'm thinking, the wrong kid. Yeah, wrong school, wrong program.
Hey guys, I'll tell you what. It just means we're getting old and we have brain farts.
That's
once
what
in a
you
while.
gotta break down 97 different leagues. That's what happens there.
Yeah. William Zion didn't play that game, and now Zion's not playing this game as well, you could say. But I'll tell you what. I like this Duke team a lot. I think you're going to have the Cassiuses at point guard facing each other, and that's going to be the matchup for the ages. But I'm just this. I'll tell you what. I don't care who you're playing. It's one of those situations. Duke's playing their first road game. I'm not saying I'm betting Duke, but if I had to give an opinion and I'm getting Duke plus 6 points, I'm going to take them. They're just in every game. They don't lose games. Michigan State is Michigan State, but they've lost twice. They lost to Kentucky. They lost to Virginia Tech. They have one win in the top 50. That's when they beat Seton Hall, and that was by only 3 points. So, it's Michigan State. Yeah, it's Izzo at home, but I'm going to grab Duke in the points.
It's interesting, Ralph, because they're no Cassius Stanley, which is going to hurt there for them. He's got a hamstring injury for Duke, so they got a little less shooting going on. This is another one of those bad matchup games to me, man, because Michigan State runs a ton of ball screens, and Duke can't defend those. They have not been able to do it here. We've seen that against Stephen F. Austin. In fact, a team that runs very similar, a whole lot of ball screens, kind of carved them up there. And I think Michigan State's got the size to deal with Carey in the middle there. This is going to be tough for Duke. It really is. And I get the point aspect, but it'd be hard for me to go against Michigan State in this spot. But I will say this, even Coach K says maybe we're not where we need to be right now. Well, this is one sure hell of a way to get to exactly where you want to be. Start by beating Michigan State tonight, and I can promise you there'll be a lot of people going, Coach K, you're going to be just fine. So 2 matchups here tonight that you guys got to deal with that all eyes will be on. You got a lot of games in the middle offering tremendous value on the card here tonight, Ralph. Is there a best bet coming our way that you like?
There is. And, Joe, I'm going to backtrack because I did not know Cassius Stanley was going to be out. It was a game that I didn't look at as far as handicapping today's card, and just did a quick read on the paper, and I actually just missed that. So that does change my dynamic, and I think this line is correct where it is now. Because, he's a freshman, and yes, he's only played a couple games, but boy, he's been a mature freshman with a lot of great assists, and he's really been a team leader.
Right.
So that has me leaning more towards the under as well when you have a point guard mismatch on one side, because now you're taking a scorer away who would be scoring for Duke. You're putting him in the point guard. And then when you're having to play Winston, now you're having to play more defense as well. So that's putting double duty on an extra guy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do think there might be some points scored in this game, a little bit more than maybe people think. Same thing in Michigan, Louisville. It's going to be interesting to see where the totals end up in those, Ralph. But is there a game here tonight maybe you like seeing what's going on? Something on the board?
Yeah, with a best bet, I alluded to it earlier, and I'm going with Indiana State. I'm going against the line move. And, I talked about early in the college basketball season that, the line moves are fairly successful, but, fairly successful doesn't mean they're always right. And I look at Indiana State, and, they started 0-4, and everyone threw them under the bus. And wins against Loyola Marymount and Air Force aren't going to excite anyone, but this is only their second home game. They started off, Indiana State did, with their first 6 games away from home. I don't know if anyone else in the country has done that.
Yep.
You start off at Dayton and Louisville, and then you go to tournaments. You played Ball State, Duquesne, and you won your tournaments. Well, they finally got back home on Saturday. They had their home opener. It was against a lower division foe, Missouri St. Louis, and they were trailing in the first half, and they actually came back and won that game. North Dakota State, to me, is a slow-tempo team that has only beaten up bad teams. Their best win on the year for North Dakota State is against UT Rio Grande Valley, UTRGV, and that they're only like number 270 in the rankings. Indiana State, a much better team. North Dakota State, I think, is just one of these situations where people look at records and you see a 5-3 record against a 3-4 record, and you see Indiana State struggled against a lower division team. But Indiana State, the Missouri Valley Conference can play some D. Lower scoring game, but I think Indiana State pulls that out.
I got, it's interesting. I saw one of these, another one of these mid-major games here that's coming there that's on the road, and that's the Bradley Braves taking on Memphis. I always find myself with Memphis, but I love these teams that just love flying up and down on the court, and we've talked about it, Ralph. Like, we know Bradley likes to slow it down a little bit. They like to force a lot of turnovers. They like to play a lot of defense. I just don't know how much of that they're going to be able to have tonight with a Memphis team that plays at a ridiculous pace at home. The line is 12. I think the total there is around 149. I can definitely see it was a great game. I watched Bradley take down Kansas State there. Really, really good game. They forced 1 million turnovers. They can shoot the ball. I think it's a bad matchup for them in the game, but I would not at all be surprised to see this game hit the over tonight, Ralph, between Bradley and Memphis.
Well, one thing is very important to look at, Joe, and you talked about the slate that Bradley's played. When you look at Bradley's schedule, they have not played a top 100 offense. Mm-hmm. The best offense they have faced was Radford.
Oof.
And I mean, IUPUI is in the 200s, Illinois, Chicago 250, Norfolk State 317, Kansas State's 191 in offensive efficiency, Northwestern's 168. Mm-hmm. So you've played absolutely nobody. The average opponent offense you faced is probably in the 230 ranges, and now you're facing Memphis, which is number 30. So I will say this, that in back-to-back games, They are playing the best offense they faced in Memphis tonight, and they're facing the worst offense they will face all season this upcoming Saturday against North Carolina AT&T.
There you go. So they're going to be two totally different ends of the spectrum.
AT&T. How about North Carolina A&T? Did anyone catch I said AT&T? I'm doing plugs now.
I was going to say, pay your bill.
Companies.
Yep, I know exactly where you're thinking there. Unbelievable. So there you got it, guys. Huge slate tonight in college hoops. And, of course, I want to remind you guys to head over to wagertalk.com. Plays packages available right now at wagertalk.com. Make sure you visit Ralph's page there at Cal Sports. At thewagertalk.com, right under the handicappers page. And, of course, make sure that you visit Ralph and tail him on Twitter at CalSportsLV. Always great information being posted there all day long. So, Ralph, good luck with the plays. Great basketball here tonight in college. We'll enjoy it. And, of course, we'll break it down again tomorrow. So, Ralph, best of luck with the plays, my man. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Joe, see you in 23. Thanks.
You got it.